Sweep Spot
is a member of the Mice Chat Podcast Network.
MicePod.com. Now, the magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweep Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken, my co-host. How's it going, Ken?
Lynn, I'm having a great time. Thank you for another great episode coming up.
Yeah, we're at episode 181.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Sure doesn't feel like it.
Feels like 300.
Yeah.
So yeah, things are going good over here. We've got a couple of things coming in our future, right?
Yes, I wanted to say, give people a heads up for our Florida listeners or people who are going to be in Florida. I'm going to be down at Walt Disney World the end of May.
Wow.
So around a few days before and a few days after Memorial Day weekend. I plan to sign books. I plan to sell books. So if you don't have your copy of our book, Cleaning the Kingdom, order it. And I will... If you don't get one that's already autographed by both of us, then I will autograph it if I see you there. You can, just contact me if you want to meet up.
Through Twitter, probably best way.
Yeah, probably through Twitter at Conversations. That's conversations but it starts off with Ken. Conversations, plural there, and you can get a hold of us.
Also, what hotel are you gonna be staying at? And then you'll once we find out where you're staying, we can announce the room number, right?
People can come by and just knock on the door at any hour of the day.
I'm sure your wife and family wouldn't mind.
That'll be lovely.
Yeah.
And normally, I used to not ever talk about where I was going to be ahead of time, but we've actually bought several mean, vicious dogs that live in our house. So if anyone wants to come by, thinking I'm not going to be here. No, actually, we do have other adults living with us currently, so don't try it.
Yeah.
So the house will not be unsupervised. We will have other people living here. So,
So that's cool. So you'll be down there, and you'll give us a full report when you come back. But if you want to get a hold of Ken while you're down in that area, if you just even want to meet him, you already have a book, and just want to say hi, send him over a tweet, and he will get that and see if you can hook that up. And
and if you maybe you're not going to be there, but maybe you're going to be coming to the annual Disneyana convention in July.
Mm-hmm. It's July
16th, I think.
16th is the show and sell. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be there. So
yeah, we'll be selling our book. We'll be there to chat with you or whatever.
Yeah, come on by, get your book autographed, buy extra copies. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I'm looking forward to that.
Make your plans now. Now, if you're listening to this late, so all of these things are in the past, well, what's wrong with you? This is why you got to listen right away.
Well, we're talking about it. It's 3 months away. So hopefully. And also, maybe, just a maybe right now, but on the 16th that night, maybe we'll have a meetup at Trader Sam's.
Maybe.
So, yeah, that makes for a long day, but I'm thinking about, we usually do a meetup at least once a year. a full meetup. We did kind of a smaller one in January that was kind of a last minute thing, but yeah. So I think we'll try to do one when we're down there. I don't get down there as often, so we'll try to put something together. So just stay tuned to our podcast for the next few months, and we'll give you more details on that. But also wanted to mention, yes, about the book. You can still get it online at our website at www.thesweepspot.com. You can get the book Cleaning the Kingdom. If you don't know what it is and you're hearing, what is this book they're talking about? Because you're a new listener, well, it's a book that Ken and I wrote about our time working at Disneyland as custodians. And we have some other stories too from some of our friends that have submitted stories to us, but it's mainly about our time working there. And it's gotten some great reviews on Amazon and a lot of good feedback from people. So definitely check that out. It's $14 at our website.
Yeah,
And
but if you buy it through our website, you
Mhm.
can get it signed. You don't,
Yeah.
if you buy it on Amazon, you probably won't get it signed.
Yeah, it won't be signed,
Yeah.
but you can get our website. It's $14 plus shipping. There's 2 shipping options, depending on what you want to spend. But check that out on our website and all our show notes and just our Patreon. We are going to have a Patreon listener, a Patreon giver, I should say, who's a listener of our show coming up. After our current events here. So stay tuned for that. Brian is a Patreon. So you can be like Brian and you can, we have different levels if you want to help our show out. You can give $1 or you can give, like Brian, $100,000. No. No. Or whatever. So check that out. It's all on our website, all the information, all the links for that. And I think we just need to stop talking and get on with the show.
On with the show.
Now we're going to have the current events. Hey, Ken, so what's taking off?
Well, Soren is taking off, Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
We have some official word now that the new Soren Around the World film will open at California Adventure on June 17th. And as reported in the Orange County Register, the new film will start showing at California Adventure on June 17th, the day after it premieres at Shanghai Disneyland. So they're going to let it premiere at Shanghai Disneyland, and then they'll bring it to stateside. The new film is expected to use the same techniques as, of course, Soaring over California. It will feature aerial images of places such as Sydney. Disney film crew was allowed to film from a helicopter containing the camera flying low over the Great Wall of China. Disney said it filmed in other locations around the world too. And as the article notes, this is not the first time Disney was allowed to film the Great Wall. A Disney crew filmed the wall in 1982 for the Circle Vision 360 film Wonders of China, which currently still plays at Epcot at the World Showcase part at the Chinese Pavilion, and it used to play where Buzz Lightyear currently is. In the mornings, it would run in a 360-degree theater at Disneyland and Tomorrowland. So, so we'll have a link to that. We'll also have a link to the official Disney Parks blog coverage of the same news.
What? So it's the old one is going to be gone after this?
Apparently it's going to be, so Soaring over California goes away,
Yeah.
and California Adventure will have Soaring over the World.
It's just my humble opinion, but I think that it would be neat if they had the Soaring Around the World and like you had a choice maybe. I know that.
Oh, the two theaters, you mean?
Yeah, like at first, obviously, I know that Around the World would be more popular because a lot of people hadn't seen it yet, but I think maybe like after summer or something, wouldn't it? What do you think? It'd be neat to have like, I don't know. I hate to, because the park is supposed to be It's Disney California
Well,
Adventure.
I think they've pretty much given up on that.
I know, but
I mean, Little Mermaid. I mean, come on.
I know, but it's
It's
just yeah, it just it's. I think it's still just a great film, but maybe this will be better.
yeah. Well, maybe they'll do a Christmas version. No, I'm just anyway.
Yeah.
It'll be like Country Bears, where one theater is Christmas year round. They just won't use it. No, it's,
Well, I'm sure Disney will be a part of this film. I mean, I'm sure. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see.
yeah, but it'll be a new thing. All right.
Awesome.
So everybody check it out. Now they Downtown Disney is we've known for a while that they're going to be losing House of Blues at Downtown Disney. And now, finally, as the Register reports, House of Blues closing May 31st, and they're going to put 300 employees on hiatus until the Garden Walk location of House of Blues opens up. Now, I have no idea why they couldn't prep the new location ahead of time so that it would be
An easy transfer.
yeah, like an overnight thing. But anyway, Garden Walk is that area that's across Harbor Boulevard. It's kind of like Harbor and Catella, but it would be the northeast part of that. It's across the Harbor Boulevard from Disneyland, and it's got, they've got like places to eat there and shops and stuff like that. And it's struggled over the years.
How's it doing lately, though? I've never been there.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point.
I mean, it's like either, Downtown Disney or there, and I don't know. It's just...
Well, the article reports that Live Nation Entertainment will shutter its House of Blues Anaheim venue in Downtown Disney May 31st, leaving some 300 employees without jobs, at least temporarily. And then it goes on to say, a House of Blues spokesperson said the company will keep all current employees and add about 100 new positions.
Wow.
When its new venue opens later this summer at Garden Walk. Garden Walk, a struggling center just a mile from Disneyland, is trying to revive itself with the addition of House of Blues, a Latin dance club, a Brazilian-themed steakhouse. Ooh, I gotta check that out. If it's gonna be Brazilian barbecue, I'll have to check that. I'm sorry to all our vegetarian listeners, I love Brazilian barbecue. So, and there, of course, there's luxury hotels going in too. Mm-hmm. So, House of Blues will take up the 40,000 square foot space previously occupied by Ultra Lux Cinemas. So they had this really high-end cinemas there.
Uh-huh.
With the whole works. I think they had drink, they'd serve alcohol to you in your seat, and I think some of this, they might have even had motion in the seats and that sort of thing. But they've just had trouble over there, and so the new venue will include a concert hall, patio, and bar. The new location is much larger than the venue's current 23,000 square foot location. So they're going from 23,000 square feet to 40,000 square feet.
Almost double. Wow.
Yeah. So again, that was from the Register, but the Disney Parks blog also has a story. Now, what's going to become of the space that currently has?
I think it'd be cool to have that. What is it, like the Indiana, like that Jungle Cruise Cantina or whatever that they have?
The Skipper Cantina.
Yeah.
Some people are saying, it'd be like a steampunk place, or maybe something. I don't know. I misspoke when I said it was a Disney Parks blog. The Disney blog, that unofficial blog, has a story on it. I think, why not? They took out Big Thunder Barbecue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they could have a barbecue place there. If they don't want to stick it, I think they should bring back Big Thunder Ranch, put it over in
Hungry
California Adventure.
Oh yeah.
Or down at the end of Critter Country, one or the other.
Yeah.
But if they're not going to do that, then maybe they could put a barbecue place in this venue. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. It could be something of a variation of something they've done somewhere else. People were saying, hey, maybe they can do the Adventurers Club.
Yeah,
which they bulldozed that out at Walt Disney World. I mean, I don't know why Disney would bring it back.
Well,
when they try to get rid of it in the first place.
Trader Sam's is so popular and overcrowded all the time. People turn away from there. I mean, they lose business because people.
Well, that's only because we go there to sign books.
Well, yeah, but that would be. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
the possibilities are many.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully they will do something really good with it.
Disney Store.
Expand the world of Disney. Yeah.
Pen trading store.
Oh, come on now.
All right.
Yeah. No, they'll make it a dream suite for people with the Disney Vacation Club. I don't know.
All right.
Okay. Well, also, of course, micechat.com continues to have regular updates, and there's one, you can see stuff from the Food and Wine Festival, and every update they have has Star Wars construction update pictures. So we'll have links to those updates in our show notes. So check it out at the website, thesweepspot.com.
I did want to mention that they've had some photos, and you've probably seen these online of the Star Wars. The expansion, some of the area that they're doing that. Mm-hmm. And there's one particular photo that you may have seen. It's actually from the fence, so the wooden bridge, between Frontier, right there, the Big Thunder Bridge right there.
Uh-huh.
There's a wall there. Well, I guess there's some people that have taken a photo through the cracks there, and it's just amazing. It just looks like a desert now. That whole area is just dirt. It's really sad in a way. But I guess they got to clear the land to build it up. So. But it's very interesting. So yeah, go over to Mice Chat, and they're definitely keeping an. Now this is a project that is kind of out in the open because you can. I mean, the parking structure. There's people up there taking photos, and it's not going to be a big secret as far as it's.
Well, it'll be. We'll have to see how much you can see before the show buildings.
Yeah, that's true too.
Get walled in, and then you can't see. I mean, there were times you could see the track layout for Indiana Jones before they actually walled up the show building.
Oh, really?
So, who knows? We'll see how that's handled. Maybe you'll be able to see some stuff, maybe you won't.
Yeah. Well, as much as we may not like it, it's it's still exciting. It's something new, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But looks like it'll be a few years, so... We'll keep you up to date.
Just keep listening to get all of the latest on that.
Great.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to have a guest on our show. It's a little bit different. It's actually a listener of our show. And this is someone that is part of our Patreon. We had asked everyone if you wish to contribute to the show, that you may do so. And if at a certain level you were allowed to be a guest on our show, and I thought it'd be fun to hear from some of our listeners. And we have Brian on the show, who is one of those Patreon people. So thanks a lot, Brian, for contributing to the show and helping us out.
No, it's my pleasure, Lynn. I'm happy to contribute.
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to ask you, where are you from?
San Francisco.
Okay, and you grew up there? Yeah, born and raised. Okay, and so did you visit Disneyland as your family would go down?
Oh, I mean, growing up, it was an annual tradition. So
yeah,
every Christmas, and it became more frequent when I was getting older. We would go to Disneyland and Disney World, and just visit the parks.
Great. So what made you interested in Disneyland probably more than maybe a normal person would be?
Normal.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's what my wife would say.
Yeah.
But no, for me, it's more of like a family tradition. So it's something that kind of links generations of my family. So, like, I went from being the kid that my parents brought to Disneyland, and now I bring my kids there with my parents, and it's like, it's nice to see, multiple generations kind of share the same thing, or the appreciation for the same thing. So that's what I really like about it. Yeah.
That's great. That's interesting because I hear that from a lot of people, and I think that's one of the things that makes Disneyland really special. Is that reason? Um,
Yeah.
so do you collect anything like any Disney, collections or?
Oh, it's. I mean, for me, it's a lot of the stuff that I like gathered from the park growing up. Like
Mhm.
like I have a large like poster of Pirates of the Caribbean from the old Disney Gallery,
Oh,
like
nice.
the one that Ken used to like that's
Yeah.
above the Pirates of the Caribbean. So when it was there, my brother and I, when we were little, like we saved up all of our pennies, and then like got that poster because it was something that like we really really wanted to get. And I mean, like looking back on it now, I didn't realize that store was so special, but it's nice to have that now. You know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
This, did now have you visited the Walt Disney Family Museum?
Yeah. I took
Over there
I was taking my kids there.
since
It's
you're so close.
yeah.
Yeah. I hope to
And
get
I'm
there
taking
someday.
our no, it's like it's a beautiful place, and it overlooks kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge area of the city. So it's if you look out, there's views where you can see the bridge and kind of like the vistas of the bay. So it's really really nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also had a shot at getting the Star Wars museum in the same area, but unfortunately our people screwed it up, and now they're in Chicago, I think.
Oh
So
man,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
doesn't belong in Chicago. No.
no, we could have done the cross promo for the parks,
Totally.
they're
the
gonna
Star
build
Wars
it
land.
over. They're gonna build it over in Mos Eisley.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. What's How did you find our podcast?
Um, I think a lot of it was like between trips to Disneyland. I was looking for like a podcast, just to get news on Disneyland and like in the parks and Disneyland in particular. So, yours was one of the first podcasts I listened to, and like I just like it's like one of the ones I kept on listening to because there's a lot of them where like you hear the same things a lot over and over again and it's kind of redundant, but
Uh-huh.
it's nice to get your perspective on the parks, just because it's something that as an average guest, that most of us are. It's something we don't have that kind of view on, or like the opportunity to see the park from through that lens. So it's a really that's that's why I enjoy your podcast so much.
Wow.
Great. Thanks. Um,
Yeah.
okay. The last couple questions. I wanted to know what's your favorite current attraction at Disneyland and why?
Uh, Indiana Jones is probably my favorite one in Disneyland.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was like the ride when I was growing up, for me and my little brother, and it's kind of like when my son was growing up, and we were taking him to the parks, and he was like 2 and 3 years old and getting taller. That was like what he aspired to. He's like, oh, I'll get on Indiana Jones when I get tall enough. So like he would like measure himself and eat his cereal and try to go to sleep early to like make himself grow big enough to get on the Indiana Jones ride. So it's yeah, and it's just I mean it's something you can't get from going to like the average theme park because it's so immersive. Like the queue is immersive and the ride itself is immersive. It's something you don't get from like an average place. So
Agreed.
it's
Yeah.
what makes the park special.
Totally. Probably the best queue
Yeah.
Disney's ever made.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. Uh, okay. Well, how about an attraction that you miss from the past that's no longer there?
Oh, like an old attraction.
Yeah.
Man. You know what? The Swiss Family Treehouse.
Oh yeah.
Because the
Yes.
Tarzan's Treehouse is nice, but it seems like it was like Tarzan was a movie that was kind of like not among the top tier of Disney movies, and it's not like a classic like the Swiss Family Robinson was because it was there for so long,
Yeah.
you know. And like growing up, it was like that was like it felt like when I was a little kid, like that was something that belonged in the park,
Hmm.
or like just was there with the park when Walt built the park.
Right.
And
Right.
Yeah, it's like one of those foundation pieces, right? Like the Tiki Room is. And then when they replace it with the whole Tarzan kind of theme, it was nice, but it was like, I don't know. It's kind of like how things are getting frozen now. Like if they
Yeah.
turn it into like
Yeah.
the frozen tree or whatever. They're theming just because there's a movie.
Frozen Tree.
That's
Now you've probably just given them
yeah.
an idea. They'll probably.
It's coming next year. Yeah.
Should
Oh
do
man.
Jungle Book tree.
Yeah, maybe they'll do
Yeah.
the Jungle Book.
Oh, the Jungle Book tree. Yeah. Well, at least that would have a connection to the classic. That'd be nice.
That's
Actually.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always miss that music. I guess they still kind of have that music, but it's not as loud as it used to be.
Swiska Polka.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, it was a short interview, but we wanted to have you on, and I just wanted to let you know that we truly do appreciate your support and help for the show.
Thank you.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to contribute at the $100,000 level. It's a drop in the bucket per month. So,
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I was
Yeah.
able to quit my job. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. We were just able to just buy new cars and everything. But the
I'm happy to be able to provide that every month.
Oh yeah. No
is
problem.
there anything you wanted to plug or
Anything?
anything you wanted to advertise?
I mean, if anything, it's that the other listeners, if you can donate whatever you can donate to Lynn and Ken, this is it's a great kind of thing that you guys do for free, because you guys enjoy it. It's obvious from listening to you, but
Yeah.
anything we can do to support you is, I think, something we should do. Yeah,
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
no problem. Cool, great talking to you guys.
You
Hey,
too.
have a good weekend.
Dateline Disneyland on ABC Television Network.
That's not Art Linkletter. That's Mickey Mouse, the inimitable little character that started this whole story with Walt Disney 25 years ago. Perhaps the most popular motion picture star in Hollywood. Well, this job in the next hour and a half is going to be a delight. I feel like Santa Claus with a $17 million bundle of gift packages all wrapped in whimsy and sent your way over television with the help of 29 cameras. The grounds are loaded with about 15,000 people who are especially invited guests of Walt Disney's. They're here from movie land, from motion picture and correspondence, from every possible kind of activity connected with the opening of the eighth wonder of the world. Governor Knight of California, ladies and gentlemen, and Walt Disney, of course, and Mr. Gurley, the president of the Santa Fe.
And of the Santa Fe and Disneyland, if you please.
That's right. Now,
Vice President of Santa Fe and Disneyland.
you gentlemen have lots to do down in the square, so we'll see you at the dedication.
All right.
Fine.
Thank you, Art.
All right, there they go. And I've got to get down and start getting ready to cover the parade, which is going to go down Main Street in a couple of seconds. And after a few words from your sponsor, Ronnie Reagan will take it away for the dedication ceremonies to Disneyland.
This is ABC Television Network.
Okay, well, now we're going to have another guest on our show, and it's actually another author. And I'm very happy to have him on the show because he just released his book called 3 Years in Wonderland. And the author is Todd Pierce. Welcome to our show, Todd.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah. When I first heard about this book coming out, I was very interested, and I was already listening to your podcast called the Disney History Institute podcast. And
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, so I was listening to that, and you had mentioned about your book coming out, so I instantly put it on my wish list for Amazon, and just very, very interesting, and it's kind of a topic that has been talked about, but maybe not as examined, as detailed as you have. And there's actually quite a bit of little stories that I've really learned a lot about. But in general, the stories of those 3 years is detailed very much.
Yeah, I tried when I first started
researching it, that was one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to go out and gather up as many stories as I could that hadn't found their way into print. Generally, what I think about the origins of Disneyland, the stories that we're all familiar with, those are the stories that have been told by the people that worked for Disneyland or Disney their whole careers, WDI their whole careers. And so, it's, kind of like the winners of the war, the people with the greatest longevity get to define what the history of the place is like. And so, really great people like, Bob Gurr and Rowley, it's those stories that we know really well. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back and get at all those stories from the people who left Disney as well, and filter them into kind of that large narrative. And once you started to add back in all the stories of the people who weren't at Disney a long time, it became a much more complex overall kind of narrative about how the park came to be. When Disneyland was designed, it was designed with art directors and architects. Many of them came from 20th Century Fox. Fox was going through some financial rough times back in the mid-'50s, and so it was easy to absorb people from that studio over into the Disney project. And they mostly thought of this as a film. They thought of this as project-by-project work.
Right.
When the park was finished, they thought they would just move on to the next film or the next project, and they had no expectations of lifetime employment. Some of them, like Sam Kim and Bill Martin, who were in that group, did find lifetime employment, but most of them really moved on. It was the exception that stayed at the park for a long time. And so there were many people that worked on the park back in 54, 55, who simply saw it as a film and moved on to the next project, but carried with them a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah, and C.V. Wood, you talk about him in the book quite a bit, and especially in the beginning about his life. Now he's someone that I wasn't really familiar with, and it's probably because he kind of got pushed out of Disney history.
He I think gets intentionally written out of
Yeah.
Disney history. There's two lawsuits. There's one lawsuit directly from Walt Disney as a person against C.V. Wood in the in 1960, in the early 1960s, where Walt's upset that C.V. is claiming that he's the master planner of Disneyland. He's also telling a lot of people that he's trying to build parks for, that Disneyland was designed by him, C.V. Wood, and Roy Disney. And he kind of, pushes Walt off to the side as though Walt was, kind of a figurehead who appeared on TV, and that was his main contribution. Mm-hmm. And Walt gets very irritated by this. The Disney studio is also somewhat threatened by C.V. Wood. He's very successful when he leaves Disney in building these Disneyland-like parks across the country. The biggest ones in New York, Freedomland, and I think if I showed you some pictures of Freedomland with its Santa Fe Railroad running around the perimeter, that you'd have to take a couple looks to make sure you weren't looking at a picture of Disneyland. Some of the imitation is really, really close.
Wow.
The Disney company gets threatened enough that Aero Development, that built a lot of the ride systems for Disney in the 1950s and 1960s, they buy a minority interest in the company in the early 1960s to prevent Aero from continuing to work with C.V. Wood, to kind of bring them in-house so that they can control the mechanism that's bringing a lot of really wonderful ride systems into their park and then into Florida. Yeah. But yeah, he does get pushed out, and so, some of that's intentional after he's gone.
Yeah, I can see why. And now after reading the book, especially, I'm almost done with it, so I'm about 10 pages to the end, but I'm starting to see at the end here why that is.
This is Ken. I wanted to add, I remember one mention of C.V. Wood in kind of the official Disneyland publications. I don't remember if it was in the Inside Story or which publication it was in, but I just remember one mention of him with a picture, and then that was it. And it was oh, look, and I remember in some sources he was referred to as president of Disneyland, and other places general manager. So were you able to or you might not even cared what his title was, but were you able to get
I know his titles, yeah. So Disneyland in 1955 is a separate company from Walt Disney Productions. So they set it up. Walt initially sets it up so he can have creative control over it, and so it's Disneyland Incorporated. It won't be part of Walt Disney Productions until the 1960s, and so there's kind of a board that governs it. Then there's kind of a management team that takes care of the day-to-day operations, and so there's kind of two separate functions that Woody took care of in terms of Disneyland Incorporated. He was the vice president of Disneyland Incorporated. Walt was president, and he's also the general manager on site. So he's running the entire show over there. Like a contemporary example of from the 90s, you guys are big 90s in the parks guys. So a contemporary example is he would have had the similar role as like Jack Lindquist. That would have been his role in the park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked is because of Jack Lindquist. You know, some people say, oh, well, he was the first person to have the title of president of Disneyland because, you know, from the 60s and 70s and 80s, you know, until 1990 or whatever, or 1989 or 1990, when Jack Lindquist gets the title of president. You know, you didn't have a president of Disneyland, so that's why I was curious, because I thought, well, was C.V. Wood ever president? You know, and yeah,
he held those duties. So the name president of Disneyland was new for Jack Lindquist, but also what happens between the 50s and really like the 70s and 80s. C.V. Wood, or Woody's able to bring in a lot of his childhood friends and people that he's worked with in other businesses to kind of surround him as an executive force inside the park. So he's incredibly well insulated in the park. He's coalesced a lot of power around himself, and Walt finds that threatening. And so he has discussions with Joe Fowler and others that what he wants to do once Woody is removed is he wants to disperse power. So there is no more general manager or a president-like person at the park, and instead power is going to be metered out to a bunch of people in the operations committee that are collectively going to oversee the park. And that was a way to allow creative people to have more influence on the park as opposed to managerial people to be worrying more about the bottom line.
Right. And another big part of your book is about the opening of Disneyland, and I always find that fascinating. You know, and there's some of the stories that are in, you know, many of the publications, but then there was quite a few that I hadn't read about before. But one of them was how Walt invited the studio employees to come down for like a preview before the park opened. So this was like a couple days. I think it was July 4th.
Couple weeks before. July 4th, yeah.
Yeah.
Almost a couple weeks before. Yeah. Yeah, so he invites at the studio there used to be the Penthouse Club, which was the gym on the top floor of the animation building.
Mm-hmm.
He invited members of the Penthouse Club, specifically with kids, to come down to the park. And they come down on July 4th for the morning and part of the afternoon, and then they go off for their festivities, you know, elsewhere with their families. But he's very curious to how people are going to react to it, particularly kids. And so at this point, so little of the park is, you know, available for people to even go in. Yeah. And so Adventureland has some things that are up and running. So the Jungle River, as it was known back then, the Jungle Cruise as we know it today, it was up and running. The canopies weren't on the boat, so they just have the bare poles. And all the animals are not yet situated on the banks, but Walt took groups around, and he did the narration on that day. The stagecoaches were running. They had the Mark Twain up and going that day. There's this apocryphal story that the first running of the Mark Twain was for Walt's wedding anniversary later in the month. It had actually been running most of the month, and employees and construction workers had been taking trips around it for a couple of weeks at that point. But they go on the Mark Twain. They had the pack mules. The pack mules had been going through their paces for a while. Owen Pope used to bring in neighborhood kids to ride them simply so the mules would have some experience with guests and with sounds and sudden movements and stuff like that. But they bring in studio families for a half day to kind of see how it's going to go with actual people in the park. There's a lot of unknowns. It's difficult to think about the opening story of Disneyland now, 60 years in the past, because we know that it's a success. But if you get in your DeLorean or hot tub or English phone booth or whatever movie time travel vehicle you want to use and go back to 55, you don't know it's going to pan out well, and there's a lot riding on this. And so I think that Walt's just anxious about maybe he really has made some decisions, and he's got to have some doubts, especially when everything's not ready for the public by the middle of July, and he wants to see how it's going to play out for families.
Yeah, and as you point out, it wasn't the same company as it is today. I mean, Disneyland is a separate company at this point, and the entire company consists of like the studio. Walt Disney Productions is the studio, and you don't have this huge behemoth that you have now. And you've got Disneyland and WED, which was designing it, and they're separate entities. And yeah, you don't have this assurance that it's going to work out. So, I mean, it's easy to look back now and say, "Well, my gosh, it's this huge moneymaker now," and it's there's all these other parks around the world that are Disney's opened up. But back then, it was like this was a major undertaking, and who knew if it was going to actually succeed.
Yeah, it's a tremendous gamble. When you look around now, the idea of theming or making places look like movies, like movie sets, that's a very familiar and comfortable idea for us. That's like a radically new idea for Walt in the mid-1950s. It's a huge gamble. Like, are people going to want to come and spend their vacation in an artificial environment, in an environment that looks like movie sets? And the answer was yes, but before you know that it's going to work, that's rolling the dice to see how it's going to work out. I actually think that C.B. Wood, when the park was getting ready to open, he's younger than Walt. He grew up more with films than Walt did, and Woody seemed to know that this was a winner in those final weeks more than Walt did. Woody was sure that Americans in the mid-1950s were going to love to spend some time inside of a western town or something that looked like Tarzan's jungle. That this was really going to appeal to them, and Walt was nervous about this in those final weeks going into the park. He didn't ask his. He asked his family not to come with him because he was worried it wasn't going to go well on press preview day.
Yeah, it's interesting. Why do you think Walt? Because reading this book, it's just crazy. I mean, it's almost a miracle that it opened at all, but then on time, barely. I mean, there were so many things that weren't finished. It just wasn't fully ready the way Walt would probably really want it. I'm just wondering why you think you didn't push it back maybe a few months just to have it ready.
I think there's two big reasons. The park is wildly in debt. It needs to have a revenue stream coming in. The park's $1 million in debt opening. There's suppliers that won't deliver wood, cement, metal anymore unless it's cash on delivery. That's how bad things have gotten. And so summer's the big season. They already know this from taking a look at comparable amusement or entertainment facilities, the zoos and Knott's Berry Farm in the area. They know they need to hit summer. And so if they get summer, they're going to have money coming in, and that's going to solve a lot of problems. The other big reason is that Walt had been promoting for a long time that it's going to be on TV on Sunday, July 17th. There's a camera crew down there, and they've been there for weeks. They've got about 30 cameras set up in the parks, and so it needs to go through. They've kind of locked into this opening date. I know that you guys are familiar with all the test and adjust stuff that goes on now in the parks before anything's open. There was hardly any of that.
Yeah.
Some of the things were operating for the first time on the week of July 17th. There was no test and adjust. It was kind of cross your fingers and keep a screwdriver in your back pocket and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure if they could have, they would have opened in early June. I mean, if they had more time ahead of time, it would have been okay. Let's open in early June so we get the whole summer. But
yeah. Yeah, and they would have, yeah. Then they could have eased into the TV show. That's what they do in Florida. They have that soft opening for about a month before they bring in the TV cameras to capture the various opening of different areas in Disney World in 1971. They learned their lesson. They saw what they should have done, and then they did it the second time around.
I know after reading the book about the opening day festivities that I've seen the the footage, the DVD I have of it, but it makes me want to go back and watch it again because now that I know a lot of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes, how they had, they had a schedule, they had it organized that they had the studio employees and their guests go to certain locations at certain times, so there would be crowds in the background.
Yeah, they want enthusiastic crowds, and they also want controlled crowds, and so
right.
All the stories about overcrowding in the park where they have, I have no idea where they've come up with that number, because people are coming in not through the turnstiles, but through other places in the park. But they have about 30,000 people in the park. Mm-hmm. One of the amazing things is those 30,000 people were on Main Street and the hub and just outside of that because they closed down all the peripheral areas so they could have good camera shots until the TV show was over. So out on the Mark Twain, those are all studio employees. Fantasyland's kept closed so the kids can run in there with Art Linkletter at the end of that TV show that you have on DVD. So it's got to be super high capacity all over Main Street and and into some spillover areas as well. But yeah, they got the studio employees. There's I've got a copy of. There was a form letter. I've got a copy of one of the form letters somewhere here, where it invites them to come at a certain time, a little bit before the show, and when they're directed to be in different areas. I talked to a couple of people that were stationed on the train, and they were both a little bit upset about it because they just sat on that train in the heat. They were in the open gondola cars on the Frontier train, the slatted open cars.
Yeah.
For over an hour in the heat before they got their cue, that the cameras were on them and they had to pull forward now, and they were just sweating like crazy. But it was live TV, so all the participants had to wait for the TV to be ready to pull them on screen.
It must have been hard to coordinate with Secret Service for President Reagan too. No, I'm just kidding.
In our time travel version of this story, it absolutely was hard.
It was the Secret Service knew what was going to happen in the future, so they anyway. I'm sorry, folks.
That'd be a great movie. That'd be a great movie.
Yeah.
But that's going to be Saving Mr. Banks, all over again. It'll be Saving Mr. Reagan or something. I don't know.
You mentioned that you spoke with someone that was there. So that as part of the research you did for this book, you were able to talk to many people that were there that day.
Oh, I talked to a lot of people that were there on Press Preview Day. Yeah, I talked to many people that were there on Press Preview Day. That's great.
So how long did it take you to write this book along with the research?
It took me. I started working on it around 2003.
Wow.
So a while ago. It took me a long time to get through the research. When I first started doing it, I kind of thought that all I was really doing was to take. I knew that there was a lot of interviews that had been done. I didn't really understand that the interviews that had been done were mainly with a small group of people that had all worked for the company for a long period of time. And then I thought I was mainly just synthesizing research that had already been completed. I didn't think I was jumping into new research, and I kind of thought I could pull it all together in a year, which was a crazy thought looking back on it now.
Yeah.
But then once I, charted it out into timelines and organized stuff, I realized there were some really big holes, and there was probably some really interesting stuff that hadn't been there. And I also thought that some of the things that had been done kind of were throwing softball questions at some of the people that were being interviewed. And so I just, this was back before I had kids too, and so I started with the California people, and I just got in my car every weekend, and I, drove down and spent a day with Don Edgren, drove down and spent a day with Stan Jolie, drove down and spent a day with Bill Martin, and Gurr and all the people are out here. And then I work over at a university, and so my teaching week's done on Thursday. And so then after that, I started to find where people were elsewhere in the country. And on Thursdays, I'd go down, and I live in a little itty-bitty town. Our airport has 2 gates, Gate 1, Gate 2. And I'd get on a plane, and I'd track down these other people, because talking to them in person works so much better than talking to them over the phone. And often they'd have photos, or sometimes they'd have letters. This one guy had tape recorded things decades ago.
Wow.
Which were really helpful. And so I after a couple of trips, I realized, this is going to be expensive. And so I went up to the United Canada, and I'm like, if I was to fly out on a Thursday or a Friday, and I was hoping to put myself on an overbooked flight, what time should I look for? And they told me, it's on Friday, it's this flight that's almost always oversold. And so, I always go on that flight. And my big plan for trying to get as much research done as I could was to try to get myself on some oversold flight going out or back. And I almost always could. There was one time that I had 6 flight coupons in my sock drawer. And so I was just kind of cycling myself out on these trips to go talk to people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s to record as much as I could, as long as they were still around.
Wow, that's great. So was there anything that you really thought was something that was, I was going to say like a challenge, like maybe that you were having difficulty with getting information about?
Oh, there was all kinds of things that were...
like the sea.
It was hard. Once I got into kind of C.B. Wood's friends, things went pretty well, but it was really hard to track them down to get them talking initially.
Yeah.
That was one of the places that I went 3 times. I went to Texas, and the first time was in spring, and I spent 4 or 5 days out there in a rental car. Then I went back that summer and spent 2 trips there, probably about a week each, just driving around, talking to as many people as I could. And then once I kind of, once they understood that I was trying to kind of, paint a fairer picture of what went on, then I think they were a lot more open to talking with me.
Right.
They had the idea that the Disney people didn't like Woody very much, and I think that was a barrier initially.
I could see that, yeah.
Yeah, he goes on to do amazing projects for the rest of his life. The Lake Havasu people, I spent a number of weekends out on Lake Havasu tracking down things about him. They uniformly love and revere him. Once Woody finds success and has a good bit of money, he relaxes a lot, and he becomes far more generous in terms of his personality than the Disney people remember him in the mid-50s.
But he still didn't open a chili cook-off chain of restaurants, though. He could have done that.
He could have done that, yeah. He could have done that, yeah. He did have. He was a showman, so but he was involved with those Texas chili cook-offs. He helped start them with Carol Shelby. But he used to have little props that he would take around with his chili cook-off days. He had this wand that he called something like the Magic Taster Wand. It was electronic. This is the 70s too. It's all self-contained, and he would dip it into other people's chili, and there was like a button that he would depress at the back, and the little lights would light up 2/3 of the way, and there'd be this little like magical sound that would make it sound pretty good. And then he'd put it into his chili, and there'd be a different small button he'd depress in the back, and all the lights would flash like crazy, and there was like a fanfare that came out of the thing indicating that his was the best chili out there. Yeah, but he has an interesting life all the way through, even after the years that he leaves Disney.
Well, I'm glad you were able to bring to light some of the stories about him, because that were kind of buried away.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that like so much of what we've known and what we've read for years and years and years has just been stuff that Marty Sklar wrote, often without attaching his name to it. It's just the official line that's been given, and it might you can still have it be true without it giving you the whole picture. Like there's just a lot of stuff that's kept out, and so I think it's great that you've done all this research to help bring out more information, and that's great.
Yeah, but that's the company's job. So the company is beholden to its shareholders. The company needs to make the shareholders happy, and so the image that I think you're exactly right. There's nothing that I know that they've put out that's intentionally untruthful. I think there's some kind of like tall tales that have been told so many times that they now seem true that get put out in some of the official publications. But there's nothing that I think's put out that's intentionally untrue. But you're right that Disney is trying to present itself in a certain way. It's a brand company. I think they do amazing things, and finding kind of like the larger history of important events in American popular history maybe isn't the job for the company itself or for the film itself or for the business itself in other instances. And that's where other people come in. And there's been a lot of people working on things with, Disney and other companies that kind of, present a more nuanced history of what happened 50 or 60 or 70 years ago.
Well, I also wanted to talk about, you have a podcast, and it's like I said, the Disney History Institute podcast, and tell us a little bit about your podcast, when you started, and I don't know, I like how the direction that you take. I mean, you kind of have different subjects about different parts of history that aren't necessarily something that's well talked about.
Yeah, so the podcast has been going for, I think, about 3 years. I could somewhere around there. Me and Paul Anderson and Jeremy Marks, we have a blog called the Disney History Institute, DisneyHistoryInstitute.com, and we've been posting articles up there for 6-7 years, a while. And a few years ago, I've got a long commute to work, and I listen to podcasts and other things in the car, books. My commute in to work is an hour each way, so if I go into work, it's 2 hours in the car. And so I really enjoy that world of finding something that I'm really interested in and listening to it, and as I go back and forth with windshield time driving in. And so I thought, well, there's a lot of podcasts out there that do current events, and there's a lot of podcasts out there that have kind of a radio format. And what I wanted to do with a podcast was to really have an audiobook, or I'm old school, so book on tape. No one has tapes anymore.
Yeah.
I still call them that. Book on tape version of it, where I just kind of read articles. And so that's kind of how it started. And so now there's times that I just write articles. I'm really not that great at ad-libbing stuff, so everything that's on the podcast is kind of typed out and on the screen in front of me, and I just read it down. So now sometimes I do podcasts where I just write articles for the podcast. I'm doing one right now on the trips that Walt made in 1959 and 1960 to Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, where he had this kind of handshake deal to build Disneyland East, a second Disneyland, out in Florida. So he's looking into building this park. There's an agreement to do it between him and John D. MacArthur and RCA and NBC. That they're going to all go in on this project together. It's the interesting thing about this is, and it's one of the things that I think that the big biographies have kind of missed, is that if you read through the big biographies, like the Neil Gabler biography, which I think is an excellent biography, by the way, there's like little things that they had kind of missed in the background, and those are really interesting things to kind of go in and figure out what's going on. Epcot always kind of comes up out of nowhere, and the Bob Thomas biography comes up out of nowhere. It's like, and then Walt was interested in building cities. And this is where it comes from. Walt is very quietly. He's not traveling in the company jet. He's going out in public planes to commercial aircraft to Florida to look into this Disneyland East project. And he's spending a lot of time with a very eccentric, very, very wealthy man who owns about 12,000 acres in Florida that he wants to make into a planned garden city. And he's working with RCA to bring in an industrial complex. He's interested in having an entertainment area for locals, and he wants to have Walt come in as well to build a park, to have a financial base, a tourism economy in there. And he's trying to pull this together. And this is where Walt's first exposed to a lot of these ideas on city planning and how he might be able to get these ideas to play out. And it feeds into other things that he's been interested in, how to use environment at Disneyland, at the studio, to increase comfort, to increase productivity. So it plays into things that he's been looking at before, but on a much larger canvas. And this goes on for a couple years until Roy mainly gets into it with the MacArthur people there. But the project would have come through if the MacArthur people had been a little bit more willing to give up more land and more rights to the hotels that they wanted to build. And so Disney was going to own about 400 acres for the theme park and the surrounding area and for parking. And Roy thinks that because this is a tourist draw, that they should also have a percentage of the hotels that are being built. And this is the huge sticking point, is Disney going to have buy-in on the resort hotels that are going with the theme park or not? And if MacArthur had given in on that, then Disney World would be much smaller, and it'd be down just north of Miami instead of in Central Florida. And, it's a good thing that he didn't give in on that, because we would have had a much smaller property out there than what was built. But that's what that's where the Epcot ideas allow Walt to engage things that he's been thinking about really for decades into a city planning model. And after that, once he comes out of that experience, he's starting to think about what he wants to do is a much larger version, much more futuristic, near future concept to what John D. MacArthur was trying to pull off with his property in Florida.
Yeah, that is something that's definitely a part of the history of Walt Disney World that a lot of people don't know about. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. Yeah.
That's what's on the podcast this week.
Yeah.
So a lot of the podcast right now is, in going on and doing a lot of the research for, 12 years or so, there's been a lot of stories that I've kind of stumbled across, which I found interesting, which simply don't have place in. So the books, this book, and I'm working on one after it, all have narrative arcs. Like there's a beginning and there's an end to them. So this one, the beginning is mostly about the planning of Disneyland. The end is shortly after it's open. So there's, entry and exit points, and so that there's stories that take place in that time frame that just don't seem like they belong in the book. That it would be, a less readable book if there was a bunch of tangential, though interesting stories that were branching off from it. So one of the things I've been doing recently with the podcast is that now that the book's out, I've been kind of going back to a lot of those stories that I thought were interesting and finding ways to make little half-hour episodes out of them.
Yeah, well, I like those. I listen to podcasts at work all day, and yours is one of them. So thank you
very much.
Yeah, thank you for doing it. So before we go, I just wanted you to plug, where people can get your book, 3 Years in Wonderland.
You can find it on Amazon and some regular brick and mortar bookstores where they have physical books that you can put in your hand. I do believe that the cheapest place for it right now is on Amazon. I think it's like $22 or something up there. It's hardback.
Yeah.
But you can get it at all the online outlets and some actual real bookstores as well.
Yeah, I noticed on Kindle too, right?
It's on Kindle too. Yeah, I haven't seen the Kindle version. It's on Kindle. You're right.
I haven't either. I just noticed that you had it as an option on Amazon. But
yeah,
the book is beautiful. The cover, everything looks great. It's a great book. I highly recommend it if you're interested in early Disneyland. But great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and wish you all the luck with your book, and hope to meet you someday.
I hope to meet you guys too. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that concludes episode 181 of the Sweep Spot podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, folks. And something that I don't think we mentioned yet in this podcast, shirts. You go through our website, you can buy our T-shirts, which they're evocative of Adventureland and the Haunted Mansion, and they're just, you put those things on, and those things are total chick magnets. So
art guy magnets, right?
Yeah, but most of the listeners are going to want to be chick magnets,
Oh, yeah.
Even the girls. But anyway,
man, what a show, though. I mean, just thank you so much to Todd for coming on, and he's just a wealth of information for Disney, and thank you for Brian again for your contributions and for coming on the show. And wow, so yeah, go out and buy Todd's book, 3 Years in Wonderland, and I think we're going to try to have I'll put a link in the show notes, a link to his book and his blog, actually. And if you want to, leave a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate any reviews, because that does help others find our podcast, and it kind of puts us in the higher up in the ratings, I guess. It's not really ratings, but kind of I guess there kind of is ratings, but it definitely does help us in some way or another. Also, just if you have any questions, or you want to talk to us, or have any show suggestions or questions or anything, we really appreciate anyone just giving us an email. I get emails all the time from people, and people that maybe wanted to add to what we were talking about. Maybe there's something we missed. We're not perfect. We're not robots. We're
And what would that address be?
That address would be thesweepspot@gmail.com, or at our website at www.thesweepspot.com. There's a link there to leave an email or a message also. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll do it. Thanks again to Disney Chris for your wonderful music you provide and your website. Check out DisneyChris.com for all your Disneyland music. So I think that'll do it for episode 181. Thanks a lot.